There he is. Look at that handsome face. I was waiting to see you on Sunday night. It's always a great Sunday night when I get to see you. How are you, Lev?
I'm doing fine. I can tell that looks like either a Marriott, a Courtyard, a Residence Inn. Which one?
Marriott.
Which one is it?
It's a full-service Marriott. It's in Bethesda. I've stayed here numerous times, but it looks a little dark and dang, doesn't it?
That's kind of representative of the entire week, wasn't it? It was 50 degrees. It was terrible rain on Friday and Saturday.
Someone asked me, when was the last time you were this cold, you were this wet, you were this miserable? The only thing I could think of, and you can harken back to this with me, is at the Open Championship at Portrush, which is just a few years ago. But that's the last time I was this cold and damp and just uncomfortable, and it wasn't a very comfortable week, which gets me to which we're starting with. Max Homa wins Wells Fargo Championship for the second time, but it's a different golf course. It's a different vibe. It's a different Max Homa. When I look at him, and I was listening to the broadcast earlier tonight, and Trevor was talking about he might be the tour's most underrated star. Do you agree with that?
I don't know. Are we really sure that Max Homa is
But it comes
a star?
heavy with the take. Yes,
Well,
I don't know. Yeah.
Look, I'm not sure that he's a star. I think he's very popular. He's certainly popular among the Twitter crowd. If you asked my 7-year-old father-in-law if he knows who Max Homa is, or if he knows that he has a big online presence, he probably would say no. But I think this victory was important for a couple of reasons, because it can eventually vault him into that superstar category. This is going to move him now inside the top 30 in the world. It's certainly going to put him more on the U.S. President's Cup radar. This is something that he dearly wants to do. For Max Homa to take the next step in his career, he needs to replicate this type of form in the big tournaments. You look at his major championship career, still a kind of a small sample size, about a dozen majors under his belt. Best finish was a tie for 40th, has a bunch of missed cuts. He needs to be able to do this on a big stage. Do I think he's incredibly popular among people my age, and certainly his PGA Tour peers? Definitely. He's an immensely likable character. I think the next step is to do it at the next level, right?
No, I would agree with you, and I would take it a step farther, because I'm impressed with the idea that he is such a good ball striker, specifically off the tee, long irons, mid irons. Like, I think he's right there or just behind Collin Morikawa in that category. I'm taken by the idea that he was so good on the greens this week, because that was
right behind Collin
thing.
Morikawa in that category. Okay. What?
Well, I said behind because I knew you were going to flex on that one. So I
way
did
behind,
throw that in there.
But yeah, he is behind.
I'm going to go with just behind. But the part that got me was he putted so well this week. To start the day today, he was 6th in strokes gained putting, which is about 50 spots better than his average so far on the PGA Tour. And it's amazing. Keegan Bradley, who he beat, was kind of right there with him as far as not a great putter, decent ball striker. If he has a good putting week, he can win. In this particular case, I'm impressed by Max with the idea that he only needed a decent putting week. And it was very, very simple. He started working with Phil Kenyon. It was something that he felt like he started using aim point.
Like last month. Like this is just a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, at the Masters. Yeah. It was at the Masters where they started working together. And it just clicked. And so in my mind, that registered to the point that if he putts this well, which wasn't great, he didn't lead the field in strokes gained putting, but if he putts just this well on a week in and week out basis, I think you're going to see a more consistent Max Homa. And a more consistent Max Homa is a superstar, I would say.
And look, he's always struggled with, I would say, insecurities, professional insecurities, self-belief, kind of doubting his abilities. This is a guy who 5 years ago, Rex, on the PGA Tour, he made just 2 cuts. He earned $18,000, I think it was, and had to earn back his card. So he's kind of always been the underdog, always kind of had a chip on his shoulder. And now it's upon him and his team to instill that belief in him that he actually does belong among the game's elite, that he does have the type of game that can contend in major championships. So Rory McIlroy said it great, and you may have even been the one asking him the question. He said, Max Homa looks like the guy who has accomplished more than he actually has. So if Max can start to believe that, I think he's certainly capable of doing some pretty special things.
You have to work so hard just to make $18,000 in one season on the PGA Tour. That's hard to do. I mean,
that's like me working in Sebring, Florida for my first newspaper job.
Yes, like that you have to work so hard just to be limited to that much over a full season on the PGA Tour. You mentioned Rory. He ended up finishing again in the top 5. That's back-to-back top 5s going back to the Masters. There's a lot of ways to spin this, but I'm curious from your perspective, because you watched it from home, what grade would you give Rory for this week?
I'd give him a B+, and there's a lot that goes into that. You know, he needed to make about an 8-footer on the 36th hole just to make the cut on the number. He was one of very few players who shot under par both weekend rounds, which was certainly very impressive. I think kind of the only knocks that you could have on him this week was the fact that he got within 2 shots of lead on the back 9 on Sunday and ended up playing his last 8 holes in 1 over par. You would expect, you would hope, you would think that Rory could kind of capitalize on those chances in a leaderboard, which I know Max Homa had won 3 times, but he's still somewhat unproven in that arena, and he tried to give it away on a couple of occasions. So I guess that'd be the only knock. I think you saw some significant improvement with Rory's approach play, which was something that we wanted to key on. That was something we talked about last week in Writer's Block. That's kind of been his Achilles heel so far this season, and probably the reason why he hasn't gotten back in the winner's circle since the CJ Cup last fall. But I saw nothing this week, Rex, outside DC that would dissuade me from thinking he's a top 5 favorite for the PGA Championship.
I would agree with you. And here's the part that gets me about Rory is even on Saturday night when we talked to him and someone tried to make the argument that you're 6 strokes back, but does that really not feel like 6 strokes given the conditions, given the fact we're on a very, very difficult golf course we're going to talk about. And he was like, no, still feels like 6 strokes. Like he's still very realistic in the idea that, no, I'm still going to have to go out.
But Keegan historically has been a terrible final group player. I mean, he's been in the final group 11 times in his career. Just once has he walked away with the victory. So you kind of had a feeling he was going to come back. Maybe you could go put a 66 on the board and make some noise.
This is completely apropos of nothing, but you know what a hot dog group is? And I only ask this because it applies here. Do you know what a hot dog group is?
No.
So James Hahn told us that on Saturday night going into the final round, he kind of looked up at the leaderboard when we were questioning, and he said, oh, good, I'm going to be in the hot dog group. And immediately we asked, like, what is the hot dog group? And he goes, that's the group that everyone turns to themselves and be like, who's in the next group? Oh, James Hahn, I'm going to go get a hot dog.
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
Which is fantastic. All right, Haley took the Rory McIlroy question away before I could even answer. So I'm going to make this very, very quick. I think what Rory was looking at was 6 strokes back. He was going to have to do something very, very special. You're right. Keegan does not close very well from time to time. However, I think he was realistic enough. B+ is probably what I would do as well, simply because I think his game's in a good place.
He looks good. He looks really good.
He looks good. I think when I asked him specifically, what do you need to tidy up before you get to the PGA this afternoon when he finished up, he said, and it sounded like his decision-making has been off. So it's as simple as on the 16th hole today, hits a full wedge, it spins back off the green. He doesn't have a birdie chance. Whereas in that situation, he said, I probably need to try to hit something, a 9-iron, try to get it up there with less spin and get it somewhere close. And that is not a bad position to be in going into the season's second major championship. All right, the biggest story of the week, which is amazing to say since this happened on Thursday, is after Sergio Garcia got a ruling that he did not like, which, by the way, got overturned later by the PGA Tour.
That was a bad ruling, it turns out.
It was a bad ruling. There's some irony there. But he said, and there was quite a few things that he said, but essentially he said, in 2 weeks, I'm done with this tour. I can't wait to move on. There were other things that being said. What do you take from those comments, and are his days on the PGA Tour numbered?
It certainly appears that his days on the PGA Tour are numbered, because he's telling us that his days on the PGA Tour are numbered. And look, Sergio had been one of those guys. Certainly, James Corrigan of the Telegraph has kind of been ahead of this. Certainly, with all the European guys, he's been one of those guys who's been linked to this Live Golf Series. So no, it would not surprise me at all if not only did he request, and he did request to play in that opening event in London, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him be kind of featured in all 8 of the tournaments that they're going to have this year. And it wouldn't surprise me at all, Rex, for a couple of reasons. If you're Greg Norman and company with Live Golf, you want a player like Sergio. He has Ryder Cup pedigree. He certainly has name recognition. He's a major champion. It makes a lot of sense. If you're Sergio Garcia, the Live Golf Series makes a lot of sense as well. He's 42. He's on the downside of his career. He has just a single PGA Tour victory since his Masters victory in 2017. This essentially, on Sergio's part, would be a concession that he can no longer hang with the game's elite. Fair or not, that's essentially what he would be saying. That sounds brutal, but I think the reaction that we saw to Sergio, like I think of Martin Keimer. So Martin Keimer is another player who was asked for a request to play in London. People were pulling their hair out like, oh my God, Martin Keimer, please don't do this to us. Like it was kind of a shock to the system. Sergio, it's like, okay, see ya. Thanks for playing.
Okay, goodbye. Keep going.
See ya.
Yes. I guess the part that got me, and I agree with you that, look, he's the guy they're going to go after. That makes perfect sense. I'm talking about Live Golf. The part that got me is the deadline for the PGA Tour to grant or deny the first release for the first event, which is it's Tuesday. And the second one is where this is going to get interesting. We've talked about this at length. That one's in the United States, and there's specific tour rules that say they're not going to give those releases.
Registration opens in 9 days, Rex.
Yes. And so
get your lawyers ready.
I guess my point is based on his comments with no more context, and this is always a slippery slope when you're a journalist, and I hate doing this, but based on no context, it essentially seems like Sergio is moving on regardless of what happens Tuesday, or regardless of what the tour says about playing in Portland. Like, he's done.
It wasn't like a glad to be done with you in a couple weeks, and then I'll play that one. Oh, and then I'll see you in a month.
And then I'll be back from Memphis or whatever the case may be. No, there was none of that. It was, I'm done. I'm moving on. And if I'm the PGA Tour, that is a little concerning. Because look, up until this point, you've given the opportunity to players to turn back. They can all walk to the edge of the cliff, but all of them have turned back. None of them have been lemmings and jumped over the cliff. In this particular case, I think Sergio was finally the lemming that's jumped over the cliff.
And it's very interesting, Russ, because just like Lee Westwood before him, Sergio is making a calculated risk, and he's essentially calling the bluff of Keith Pelley and the rest of the DP World Tour brass and saying, do something about this. Suspend me, ban me. Like he's last year at the Ryder Cup, Rex, he went 3-1. He was terrific once again in foursomes. You would have thought that he'd be a captain probably in 2027, assuming Poulter gets the nod in 2025. Now that is up in the air, certainly, because Poulter's been linked to Live Golf Series as well. So look, either, as a player, as a captaincy, he's essentially calling their bluff and say, do something about this, because I'm about to go cash in big time.
Deadline, as you pointed out, it's Tuesday for that first Live Golf event. You and I will probably be recording the podcast right after that deadline and talking at length about it. So check that out. All right, we're going to finish up with the idea that, remember when everyone on social media was talking about that golf is too easy, that the PGA Tour players are making the game?
It's almost like social media is not a good barometer of how the game is actually played.
That's crazy, because this week at TPC Potomac, again, very, very difficult conditions. We've talked about it. So cold, so rainy, not happy at all. This is muddy. I don't know what to tell you. I don't smell very good right now. But when you look at this golf course, which is going to rank as the third toughest golf course on the PGA Tour, is this sort of an indication of what we thought was going to happen when everyone was screaming that the game was too easy?
Yeah, look, there was always going to be a market correction. What do you think is going to happen on a resort course when the wind doesn't blow? Or what's going to happen when you have the American Express? And you're not going to have these Cameron Smith, John Rahm shootouts of 30 under par every single week. That was not going to be realistic. But I have to be honest, Rex, I did not remember TPC Potomac basically at all since it held. Remember the Quicken Loans back in 2017?
18.
Frankie went in 18 as well, with Frankie going absolutely nuts and winning by 8 shots. I did not remember the golf course at all, probably because I did not watch it ahead of that. Was probably during our Open Championship fortnight when we would head over to Scotland.
No, I covered it, so I was here. I don't know where you were, but I was here. Yeah,
that's probably right. Probably in the Bahamas or something. But look, I did not remember the golf course. I thought it was a terrific test of golf. Like, you had a great mix. I think par 70 obviously is going to keep scores in check just because that's how The golf course is set up with only 2 par fives, but I thought it was a great mix of, drivable par fours and long par fours. The par fives weren't pushovers by any stretch of the imagination. You certainly had 17, a difficult par three that made it for some compelling golf down the stretch. So I just think this is a good golf course, and I'd like to see it be part of the PGA Tour rotation somehow and kind of take away some of these cupcake venues that we see probably a little bit too frequently on the PGA Tour schedule.
Cupcake venues. I will say this, and not only is it a good golf course, you're right, it should probably be in some sort of rotation, but the fans here are fantastic. And I only say this anecdotally.
It's a huge market.
It's a huge market. I only say that anecdotally because as Luke List walked to the first tee on Saturday morning, I was standing there and it was raining, it was cold. It was not a very good day for golf or golf spectating. He turned to me and he asked, and he said, "Don't these people have couches and TVs?" Like, this made no sense whatsoever to him. It was so cold. It was so rainy. So it's a good market. I would like to think they come back. Here's the deal that I find fascinating is you're right. This is not a resort course. It's a very, very difficult golf course. Congressional was going back in the rotation for not only women's majors, but men's majors. And driving by it a couple times.
In like 2047.
It looks completely different. It's like an Oakmont thing. Like, they've got rid of every tree on property. I asked Rory, who went over there on Wednesday, and he said unrecognizable, which is interesting to me because it's sort of a known commodity. We all know Congressional, it's been in the rotation for so long. That being said, I think TPC Potomac is a more demanding golf course. It's a more difficult golf course, which is weird because early in its career, and this goes back to the Booz Allen days on the PGA Tour when it was a regular tour event, it was really maligned. Like, guys did not like that golf course. And then when I asked Rory today about, you said the golf course was underrated. Do you agree with that? And he was like 100%. There was no doubt in his mind that this is a golf course that should be in some sort of rotation. Now, you could probably say that about a bunch of markets and a bunch of courses, but yes, I think it's a special place.
And this is exactly what Live Golf has tried to capitalize. I don't think the PGA Tour does a great job of playing up to the markets. Like, you don't have a standard PGA Tour event really in San Francisco. You don't have one in Chicago. You don't have one
New York
in the Northeast. New York, Boston, DC. Like, this is just a one-off for the Wells Fargo Championship before it heads back to Quail Hollow because it's hosting the President's Cup this year. Yeah. That is exactly what Live Golf has tried to do because there's these underserved, enormous markets for golf. They have an appetite, and clearly, as you saw this week, these fans want to see some golf.
What a segue. Live Golf. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure, on Wednesday after the deadline on Tuesday comes and goes. He's Lav. I'm Rex. We'll see you on Wednesday.